The Princess Bride isn't just a fairy tale movie. It's one of the weirdest, wittiest, and most quotable movies ever made. But behind the as you wish romance and swashbuckling sword fights, this cult classic hides some seriously strange secrets. From near-fatal stunts to on-set chaos and casting choices that almost changed everything, there's way more to this story than true love and rodents of unusual size. These are 20 weird facts about The Princess Bride, and the bonus, why true love isn't the only thing that's inconceivable. Number 1. The production was cracking apart. Rob Reiner's dream project was collapsing before it even began. The studio pulled a classic Hollywood move and slashed the budget at the last second, which meant the crew had to somehow build the fire swamp, the Cliffs of Insanity, and Miracle Max's cottage with about half the money they actually needed. Sets were literally falling apart mid-scene. They couldn't afford proper stunt coordinators for weeks, so the actors were out there learning sword fights in parking lots like medieval LARPers on a coffee break. Reiner was staying up late rewriting scenes just to keep the thing from collapsing, financially and emotionally. Honestly, it's a miracle the movie didn't just end with a title card that said, "We ran out of money. Use your imagination." William Goldman's script got rejected 17 times, which, to be fair, is about 16 times more patience than most people would have had. Studios didn't know what to make of it. They were like, is this a fairy tale? A comedy? Why are people being both serious and sarcastic? That's confusing. They wanted him to dumb it down, lose the satire, tone down the meta stuff with the grandpa and kid, make it more normal. Basically, they wanted to strip out everything that made it clever. Goldman said no, because he knew that if he changed one wrong thing, it would go from timeless cult classic to generic Sunday matinee you forget halfway through. Hollywood was terrified of it because it did something most movies didn't. It made you care and laugh at the same time. And apparently, that was too emotionally complex for the executives who greenlit Howard the Duck. When Rob Reiner pitched The Princess Bride, most studios reacted like he'd just suggested a musical about tax law. Total silence. The only people who didn't immediately flinch were Norman Lear's team, who somehow saw potential instead of a box office disaster. One executive apparently begged him to change the title to anything else. They said princess and bride together would make every man in America avoid theaters like it was contagious. Others thought it sounded like a kid's movie, or worse, some mushy romance that would scare away anyone hoping for swords and explosions. But Reiner held his ground. He told them the title was The Joke. It was supposed to sound soft and fairy tale-ish, while the movie itself turned every cliché inside out. You could practically feel the blood drain from the executives' faces when he refused to change it. They thought he was tanking his own career over 4 words. Joke's on them. Those 4 words became legendary. Now remember that duel between Inigo and Wesley? Yeah, it wasn't just a movie sword fight. It was months of borderline obsession. Mandy Patinkin and Carrie Elwes trained like Olympic athletes under Bob Anderson, the same guy who choreographed Star Wars lightsaber fights. They practiced for weeks until every move was pure muscle memory. No stunt doubles, no cheating camera angles, just 2 guys actually trying not to stab each other while looking cool. The insurance company, naturally, freaked out and wanted doubles for safety reasons. Rob Reiner basically said, "Nah, we're doing this for real." The result was one of the best sword fights in movie history. Every parry and flip you see is them. No stand-ins, no tricks. Just a pair of actors proving you can make art with pointy sticks. And a total disregard for workplace safety. If you think that was extreme, wait until you see what they did to the giant rat in Fact 15. Andrei Roussimoff, or Andre the Giant, as everyone knew him, was a literal legend, and also, sadly, in constant pain during filming. His acromegaly, a rare hormonal disorder caused by the body producing too much growth hormone, had wrecked his back and knees, so every scene had to be carefully choreographed to make sure he didn't get hurt. The guy weighed around 500 pounds and couldn't safely carry anyone, which made all those gentle, giant moments trickier than they looked. The crew had to build special rigs and harnesses, and Robin Wright was often on wires that made it look like Andre was holding her. His hands were so huge that props had to be custom built, just so cups and swords didn't look like dollhouse toys. And here's the part that gets you. Andre knew he was dying. His body was falling apart, but on set he made everyone laugh, convinced them he was having the time of his life. That's not all. He also caused some complications on scene because of his excessive drinking, but more on that, in fact. 19. The rodents of unusual size, those terrifying man-in-a-rat-suit creatures, were exactly what they looked like. Dudes sweating inside rubber fursuits, trying not to pass out. The fire swamp sequence was totally insane. Cary Elwes insisted on doing his own stunts, which sounded cool until you realized the fire bursts were real flame jets. He rolled through burning debris, wrestled a guy in a heavy rat costume, and somehow didn't turn into medieval barbecue. The studio was horrified. They wanted to tone it down, make it less dangerous and more family-friendly. Rob Reiner said absolutely not. The danger was the point. If Wesley was going to survive, it had to actually look like he was surviving something. So, during the big sword fight with Christopher Guest, Count Rugen and his 6 Fingers of Evil, Cary Elwes decided he wanted the knockout scene to look authentic. Guest was like, you sure about that? And Elwes said, yeah, go ahead, hit me for real. Bad idea. Guest tapped him once with the sword's heavy hilt, and Cary was out cold. Straight to the hospital with a concussion. The next day's shoot had to be completely rearranged because their leading man couldn't even stand without getting dizzy. The insurance company basically started sweating bullets, warning the crew that if they kept letting actors actually hurt themselves, the policy was toast. But on set, everyone thought Cary was some kind of legend. He wanted realism so bad, he literally risked his brain for it. That knock on the head you see in the movie? That was a man discovering what commitment and mild head trauma really look like. When they said cliffs of insanity, they weren't kidding. Those scenes were shot on the actual cliffs of Moher in Ireland, 700-foot vertical drops straight into the Atlantic. The cast and crew were filming on ledges that could knock you off balance if you sneezed too aggressively. Andre the Giant couldn't do the climb because of his size and health, so they filmed him separately and composited the shots later. You can kind of tell if you look closely, but honestly, who cares? It still looks incredible. The dedication to practical effects was wild. Back then, if something looked dangerous on screen, it's because it was. So, during post-production, there was this one executive who decided he was the smartest person in the room, and he absolutely hated the whole grandfather reading the story framing device. He thought it slowed everything down and demanded they cut it completely. Basically, he wanted the Princess Bride to be 100% sword fights, 0% heart. He even argued with test audiences, like some guy yelling at clouds, insisting they didn't need Peter Falk's narration. The crowd collectively disagreed. They loved it. The grandfather wasn't just part of the story, he was the story. When the test scores came in, the executive's ego just imploded on the spot. Reiner got his sweet revenge by politely ignoring every single note the guy gave him after that. Billy Crystal was only supposed to film for one day as Miracle Max, but he arrived like a comedic tornado armed with a notebook full of insane ideas. He treated the character with this perfect mix of seriousness and total lunacy. Carol Kane, playing his wife Valerie, matched his energy so perfectly they basically invented their own movie within the movie. The crew couldn't keep a straight face, and Rob Reiner actually had to leave the room during takes because he was laughing too hard. But underneath all the absurdity, Crystal somehow made it feel real. That mostly dead line became iconic because he sold it like a man who had seen some stuff. Not just a punchline, a full-on spiritual revelation about death, chocolate, and half-baked miracles. If you're enjoying this video, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. Now, if you think sword fights and giant rats were dangerous, wait until you hear about the near-death experience during the torture scene, the absurd legal battle over merchandising, and how a single improvised line almost got cut for being too weird. You know that creepy torture machine that sucks the life out of Wesley? Well, it almost did that for real. The machine actually used live electrical effects, sparks, and smoke because apparently in the 80s, special effects safety manuals were more like polite suggestions. Cary Elwes was strapped to a spinning table surrounded by small explosive charges, while Christopher Guest pulled the levers that triggered everything. During one take, sparks flew way too close to Cary's face, and the whole crew froze, mostly because he was literally strapped down and couldn't move. They'd already banned anyone from standing near the active rig, but that didn't help the guy on it. The whole scene came dangerously close to going full method. Believe it or not, early drafts had Buttercup joining the action, sword in hand, fighting side by side with Wesley. For a while, she was written like a medieval action hero. Then, after several rewrites and too many studio notes, she somehow got demoted back to professional damsel. The problem was no one could decide what they wanted her to be, empowered, protected, or both. Some drafts turned her into a swashbuckler, others made her the classic fairy tale romantic. The script was changing personalities faster than a caffeine-fueled group chat. In the end, Reiner went back to William Goldman's original version. Buttercup wasn't supposed to be a warrior. She was the emotional heart surrounded by chaos. Number 13. It broke the mold of fairy tales. The Princess Bride pulled off the impossible. It was both a sincere fairy tale and a parody of one at the same time. Most movies pick a tone. This one looked at tone and said, "Nah, let's have both." Critics didn't know what to do with that. Some were like, "Wait, are we supposed to laugh with it or at it?" The answer, of course, was yes. That mix of genuine heart and self-aware humor threw everyone off, until audiences saw it and instantly fell in love. The movie asked, "Why do we even need fairy tales?" and then spent 2 hours proving exactly why we do. Number 14. Andre the Giant was pulling all the strings. Turns out Andre wasn't just the muscle, he was basically a co-director in a wrestling singlet. Thanks to years of performing for live crowds, he understood camera angles, timing, and audience psychology better than half of Hollywood. He'd throw out ideas that sounded absolutely insane, but when the crew tried them, they worked. Reiner later said Andre had this strange mad genius energy, like a guy who could rewrite physical comedy just by shifting his weight. Remember that risky stunt from earlier? You'll want to know how it ended in Fact 20. The rodents of unusual size weren't CGI monsters or animatronics. They were just very sweaty men in ridiculous rubber rat costumes that looked like they came from a medieval Halloween store. The suits were so thick the stuntmen could barely see, and they kept crashing into trees, props, and occasionally each other. And then there was the incident. During one take, a rat suit actually caught fire from a flame burst. Not planned, not cool. The crew had to tackle the poor guy and put him out before he turned into a cautionary tale. Critics thought the rats looked too fake and threatened to ruin the tone, but audiences didn't care. They loved them because they were weird, janky, and oddly perfect. The same suits everyone mocked in 1987 ended up becoming iconic. Number 16. The merchandise machine tried to rinse it dry. Once The Princess Bride became a cult classic, the studios did what studios always do. They tried to turn it into a brand. Suddenly, everyone wanted toys, lunchboxes, and a Saturday morning cartoon where nobody actually died or even mildly insulted anyone. Basically, they wanted to scrub off all the charm and edge until it was as bland as oatmeal. Goldman and Reiner shut most of it down. They'd already seen too many sharp, clever stories get turned into soulless merch lines, and they weren't about to let this one join them. It took decades before Princess Bride merchandise came back, this time made by people who actually respected it. You'd think a fairy tale movie would be all about the big romantic kiss, right? Well, the studio didn't think so. They thought the final kiss between Wesley and Buttercup was too long, too intense, and, their favorite word, too suggestive. Basically, they wanted a quick peck and credits. Rob Reiner wasn't having it. He fought for it to be the most perfect kiss in the history of the world. You know, the kind of line that sounds cheesy until you realize it works. He wanted it long, romantic, and completely sincere. The executives rolled their eyes, assuming audiences would laugh at it. Now, because the movie earned that moment, it hit harder than anyone expected. Every joke, every fight, every ridiculous plot twist built to that single kiss. Number 18. The humor would be impossible today. Let's be honest, if The Princess Bride came out now, half of it would get dissected to death online within 24 hours. Vizzini yelling "inconceivable" every 5 seconds? Probably accused of ableism. The priest with the speech impediment? TikTok would have a field day. Miracle Max? Oh boy, that accent and delivery would light up think pieces for weeks. But back then, those jokes weren't meant to punch down. They were delivered with warmth, not cruelty. The humor was theatrical, old school, more about the rhythm than the target. It danced right on the edge, affectionate parody instead of mockery. It's one of those cases where you can love the movie and admit it comes from a different time. André's reputation for drinking wasn't a myth. It was practically part of his biography. The man could drink a small bar under the table. But on set, it wasn't just partying, it was pain management. His body hurt constantly, so he'd numb it with alcohol, which worked, until the cameras rolled. Some days he'd forget lines or stumble through blocking, and they'd have to redo takes again and again. Eventually, production started scheduling his scenes early in the morning, before the pain, or the booze, caught up with him. Remember that prop disaster back in Fact 3? Well, it connects to something even bigger coming in the bonus fact. When The Princess Bride hit theaters, it barely made a dent. Critics were confused, marketing didn't know what to do with it, and box office numbers limped in like a half-conscious Wesley. But the movie's biggest comeback started with the most unexpected champions, Rob Reiner's own parents. Carl and Estelle Reiner were already Hollywood royalty, but more importantly, they got the film. They saw what everyone else missed, that it was something special. They hyped it up in every circle they could, turning quiet admiration into word-of-mouth legend. Carl even lent his voice as the grandfather, giving the story its soul, while Estelle later became immortal for her "I'll have what she's having" line in When Harry Met Sally. Talk about power couple energy. Their support helped keep the movie alive long enough to find its real audience, the VHS generation. Once it hit home video, The Princess Bride exploded. Hollywood might have ignored it, but family didn't. And in true fairy tale fashion, love and a bit of nepotism saved the day. The fire swamp scene? Yeah, that wasn't just smoke and camera trick, those were real flames. The crew packed the set with controlled fire effects that were supposed to behave. Keyword, supposed to. At one point, the flames spread way faster than planned and nearly burned the whole thing down. Imagine being on a soundstage surrounded by fire, foam rats, and actors in velvet capes. It was one spark away from turning into a Viking funeral. Luckily, the crew jumped into action and put it out before it destroyed months of work. It was a close call, but also kind of poetic. The movie that made danger look fun almost went out in a literal blaze of glory. So if you loved hearing how this impossible movie got made, hit that like button, subscribe for more weird movie facts, and tell us in the comments which fact surprised you the most.